Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. This is the Wealth Building Educator, and I am super delighted to have a very special guest with me today. I have Minnie, and she's going to talk about mental health and mental illness and how it impacts our finances. So I'm very excited to speak with Minnie today. Minnie, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. So I can't remember the exact video that I actually saw you and became introduced to you. Do you happen to remember it?
I have no idea. I know I found you talking to AO, and then I Googled you, and then I emailed you. So here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm
Yeah.
super delighted. You have a story to tell. Quite often, people don't understand how, mental illness and mental health issues can impact your financial well-being. So I really want you to dive deep into that today. And, my almost 1,400 listeners and subscribers, I would love for them to hear your story and, how mental illness can impact finances. So if you could just start talking about that a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. Like first, we talk about that first.
Well, tell your story first. Just give a little introduction to who you are.
Okay. So me as Minnie, I've been online since 2003, working in the adult entertainment industry as a cam model.
Mm.
And as I was working in the industry as a cam model, I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder because my home life was traumatic. I left home at 18. I had this crazy idea to answer an ad in the paper to work as a cam model. So my city has newspapers, weekly newspapers that advertise adult entertainment jobs. And
Mm.
one of them was for a cam model. So I responded to it. And the guy offered me a job to work as a cam model and live in his house. And I did for a year and a half, which looking back, it's crazy. But compared to where I was coming from with my family and my family not paying attention to the fact that I had mental illness because of childhood trauma, it was the best option because my family they were too busy working their 24-hour jobs and then not paying attention to their children has an illness or they're not doing well in school. Just a decline of you go through trauma and your concentration is affected, your cognitive ability, like remembering things is affected, and hygiene is affected. So like that decline, and then that led to bullying in high school. So that's how those got started. So then I left home. I'm living in this house. I'm working as a cam model. I'm making my first money ever. And I'm making American money living in Canada. So it's more money
Mm-hmm.
because of the currency exchange rate.
Yeah.
And then from there, I got my own apartment. And while living in my own apartment, I realized that I would sleep a lot nonstop, or I would go to the fridge and want juice and start crying. So mental illness shows up gradually, and then it piles on where it becomes where I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm not showering. Then I went to my doctor and they diagnosed me with PTSD. Then they put me on a waiting list for treatment. And that was good until 2013, where I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So, and then now they did an echocardiogram on my heart, and the left side is pumping well, but not the right side. So, yeah, you never just have one mental illness or one mental health problem. Some people do. The people that have one only, they're pretty lucky. But
Wow.
typically, as you age, you develop other things while you're maintaining the first one. And if you're on medication and treatments, they come with side effects, and those cause other health problems.
Okay, so why don't we reverse a little bit? So going back to your childhood, I know you experienced a lot of childhood trauma. Some people don't understand how mental illness and mental illness works. And do you feel you were born with a mental illness, or is it something that you gradually obtained over time based on your life experiences?
I think it's something I obtained over time based on my family, like their mental capacity of raising children young affected me and my sister differently. Like my sister, she's a doctor now. She trained for the Olympics. She's really good at academics because she figured out to manage her mental illness was to dive in to her education and sports. I emotionally absorbed everything. So I felt like everything was my fault.
Is she an older sister?
She's younger.
She's a
I'm
baby
older.
sister. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so you think she was able to navigate life a little better?
Yeah. She used her social connections because she's a social person to access support she needed outside of the family. And then me, I didn't get outside support until I lived on my own. So until I turned 18 and lived on my own, because at that time, with being 18, you're an adult, according to Canada and the US. So you can actually make your own decisions. Up until then, my parents were making decisions, but they were making decisions and not realizing how they were affecting me. Like if they made a decision, they didn't ask how I felt about it, or they didn't ask, what do I think about the decision? They just made decisions for you. So that
Okay.
impacted me viewing myself and self-esteem and self-worth, where I didn't develop those things until I became an adult.
Okay. So how many siblings were there in the household altogether?
Just me and my sister growing up. And then when I moved out, my dad had a son with someone else.
Okay, so let me ask this question. I know a lot of time the oldest child in the house takes on a lot of responsibilities. They're like the parent to the youngest or younger children in the house, particularly when the parents aren't there, like you quoted. So do you think that also has a little bit to do with, some of the issues that you face growing up, having more responsibility than your sister?
With us, it was reverse. My younger sister was more mature and more like we went out and we got money to go back to school shopping or the movies. She would have money left over. I spent all my money. So
Mm.
she would be giving me bus fare to come home and complain the whole time, and then get mad at me the whole time, and then complain to my whatever parent was around at that time that I spent all the money. And yeah, like I would like, for the stereotype of younger siblings are really the rebellious child I was. So we reverse roles that way. And it's been that way since we were growing up, where I reverted as a younger position and she reverted to an older position.
Oh, what's the age difference?
2.5 years.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my brother are about 2.5 years apart as well. So that's pretty interesting that you say that. I think that the whole sibling dynamics are, the way some people grow up in the same exact household, they're completely different. And, it sounds like you're completely an introvert. She's an extrovert.
Yeah.
And her being an extrovert really helped her to navigate through the situation that you all were in growing up. Am I correct?
Yeah. There's a time where she's like 4 and I could read and she couldn't yet. She locked us in the basement until we taught her to read. So where she could read a book in a day and I take a month to read a book. So
Wow.
there's just certain things where she's like excels at, where I'm like, I struggle. But then I'm now learning that it wasn't a struggle. It's just my brain operates differently because of trauma. Like now I'm in school and I'm excelling. So now as an adult, I'm excelling in school, where I'm going back and getting my GED and my math is 83%, which is an A here where I live in Canada. And then now my English is 93, where high school, I barely got 60 to pass the class.
So at the time, you and your teachers were probably wondering what's wrong with her.
They thought I didn't care.
Yeah.
And it's not that I didn't care. I had a lot of things to process.
Yeah. And we're
So if I,
all on the same, we all have the same targets and we're on the same playing field, but at the same time, we have different backgrounds, we have different knowledge, and we all have, some of us have, mental health issues we're dealing with. Some of us aren't, but yet we're expected to, perform the same, and it's just not going to happen.
yeah, like now as an adult and going to school, I could talk to my counselors or my professor. I get disability support. I get extra time for tests. I get, like, the beauty of the college counselors, they're also trained in psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have the space of telling like the counselors or the disability support services, I'm struggling with this and I need help. So like right now, my college is able to give me gift cards for groceries. I don't have to worry about food, or they would give me support for transportation. So things like that affect your ability in learning. So if you're not able to take care of your basic hygiene and food, you're never going to concentrate at all. And then children and adults, they're mean. They bully you for those things that they expect everybody to have, and not everyone has those things.
it's like I don't know if you've seen the picture about equity where you have a monkey and then you ask the monkey to climb up the tree to get something. Then you have an elephant and you ask the elephant to climb up the tree to get the same thing. It's just ridiculous. It's not going to happen, you know. And we're all different. So
yeah.
I don't know. So as you progressed through life and you had, you know, got your first job, you started making money, how did the mental illness begin impacting the way you spent your money? You know, obviously you said you were an introvert, and sometimes that can also impact the way that we spend our money. But how did everything, including mental illness, directly impact you?
So living on my own, my first apartment, I'm 19, and I get advice I need to build my credit. So go to my bank and give them $1,000 to get a credit card. That was the most horrible mistake ever, when it should have been build my savings account, because I just moved into my apartment. I had no furniture. And then I just learned that in 30 days of moving in, I have to pay my rent on the first. But I'm being told, go build your credit for a credit card instead of having the $1,000 saved for the next month to pay my rent. So I'm trusting adults to give me advice. And because I believe they're adults and they know what they're talking about, I do their advice, and it causes more damage for me where I have to fix the problem. Because adults that give you advice when you're just 18, 19, and then the advice goes bad, they blame it on you that you did something wrong. When no, you told me go rebuild my credit, and I did. Now I have this credit, and the credit really doesn't do anything. Because at that time, I couldn't use my credit card to pay rent. I had to actually go into the bank and get a money draft, then pay my rent, or write a check and then pay my rent. Like now we have online banking, we have online bill payments for everything. Back then, it was the most chaotic thing where I'm getting more adults to help me in my problems because one adult gave me bad advice. So with being in the industry that I'm in, and I had fans, some of my fans were supporting me until I got on my feet. And then as the mental illness kicked in, where to buy friends, the way of liking friends because you have money in your first job, that was a trouble for me. Like I was spending money, like if we went to the club, I'm spending money on drinks when I'm actually spending rent money, or I'm spending grocery money or internet money at the club. Nobody's teaching you those things of your money has to be separated so you don't spend it all in one place. My sister learned it, but I didn't catch on. That's what she was doing.
So who taught her? Was it just easier for her because of her?
She just knew. The way, if she read a book, she got the concept right away. Or if she learned it in school, she got it right away. She just learned not to spend all of her things at one time.
So
that's the thing. I don't know if she learned it from my parents who had bad spending habits, because they did. We had bill collectors calling the house all the time. My dad filed bankruptcy. And then my grandmother's habit of every week was to bet on horses at the racetrack. So for an example of good money habits, it never came from my parents.
So let's go back to your relationship with your sister. How are you today? Was there any resentment or jealousy?
We still do not have a relationship. We follow each other on social media.
Okay, so it's a possibility that she will see this video?
If it's on my Instagram, and yeah, she might. But as she's not picking up the phone to call me, she's not doing that. So we pretty much live our separate lives, and we achieve our goals independently. Like her graduating her medical school, I watch her graduation on Zoom. So that's how we communicate. We communicate through social media. We know our accomplishments because they're published online. Sometimes we say congratulations, sometimes we don't, but we're adults. If we're going to have a relationship, it's between the two of us.
Wow, that is interesting. And I think the fact that you at least watch her graduation on Zoom, even if you are somewhat distant, shows that you were proud of her accomplishment. So, and I'm pretty sure that she does appreciate that. Let's look at the fact that, you have so much focus on credit. Now, it seems like it's the same in Canada as it is in the United States. You don't get a lot of education. I mean, you have to come to these spaces and hear these YouTubers and go to Instagram and hear them talk about investing in index funds and doing those kind of things. Most of the push in our country is just on obtaining things and on building your credit. I see people that have gone bankrupt, the first thing they want to do after they get out the bankruptcy is go rebuild their credit, not realizing that, hey, your easy access to credit helped you to get into this situation in the first place. You probably should be worried on getting that emergency fund and, working on building up your assets rather than thinking about the liability. So why don't you tell about the Canadian system? Does it directly mirror the United States or what?
We mirror it with a few paragraphs are different.
Tell me, explain that. Explain that.
So we use Equifax and TransUnion. We don't have Experian. We still do the 300 and 900 credit score. And then cell phones will report to the credit bureau. I learned that companies can pay to report to the credit bureaus, or Equifax and TransUnion. It's just a fee they pay to say that you paid your bill on time. So, and I filed bankruptcy 3 times in Canada from 19 to 36. I filed it 3 times. So the first time it was a consumer proposal, which I think America calls it a Chapter 13, where you make payments on your debt until it's settled. I defaulted on that. So when I defaulted, it became a bankruptcy, which stays on my credit rating for 7 years. And then Capital One, which I love Capital One and I hate Capital One. So Capital One has given me a card 4 times. I'm on my 4th card with Capital One.
They don't care, huh?
No, they're in the business of giving people credit. So the first time I had my $1,000 credit card, which my home bank gave me a credit card. Then my home bank, after a year, gave me another credit card without a deposit. That was $2,000. Then Capital One gave me $300. That stayed for maybe 3 years. And then when I filed bankruptcy, Capital One did this twice. I gave Capital One a deposit. They gave me $300. Then I defaulted on that. The card got canceled. Then I went back and applied again at Capital One. They gave me a card for $500, no deposit. And then now I'm at $1,000 card with Capital One.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a joke. It's for credit, like, and then credit is what got me into this apartment more than me having a job.
Wow.
Like I had an income. It wasn't like, it was a part-time income working for QVC, working from home in 2006, but getting my credit rating is what got me into the apartment. And then I had to figure out paying the rent. Same thing with my first apartment before this one, and that I got after living in that house, working as a webcam model. So even working in a cam model, that guy was trying to use my credit because he had bad credit. Wow. So I had to clean up my credit because it was fraud. And even that, nobody teaches you how to do that. No one teaches you how to go to a lawyer. They have to make an affidavit that it's not you borrowing the money. And then the phone company at the time got to use my name to get the phone back on. They weren't paying attention that my name was multiple places on their file. Even now, like the internet and phone companies, if you don't pay on one phone company, you could switch to the other one. And as long as it's like not collecting for a period of time, they'll still give you service. So it's really weird of ruining, like I've ruined my credit so many times and I rebuilt my credit so many times. Yes, keeping your credit good is better, but that window of, oh, my credit is ruined, you feel like your life is over, that's not true. That is a complete myth, because if you get back to work, as long as you're working and have a solid income, people will give you service. They want to give you service. They want to sell you stuff. You may have to pay a deposit, or they may put you in a credit limit program. Like I was working at Sprint in the call center, and people had a credit limit. If they went over $200, their phone got cut off until they're below $200. And if they did that for a year, then their phone service is a normal phone service.
But you're always in debt.
Pretty much, or you're paying more of a deposit to get the service.
Gotcha.
Or you're paying month to month without a contract. So like it just like there's pay as you go, there's contract, there's credit, like Apple financing. There's a way of getting what you need without actually borrowing money, or there's a way of getting what you need with borrowing money. It's just a matter of what are you choosing and what you can commit to.
Those are some good points. I think that we focus so much on credit in our society, and evidently you all do as well up there. Dave Ramsey, who obviously you're going to speak about in a little bit, but he often says he can go into an apartment complex and buy the entire apartment complex, but he can't rent an apartment because he doesn't have credit, because he pays cash for everything. Of course, he might be an extreme example because he has millions upon millions of dollars. But even for the average person, people that don't focus on credit scores and they focus on building cash, they can have $1 million in the bank. And if they don't have that credit score, there are some things they won't be able to do. So it just seems like there's over dependence of credit in our society. So I don't know. Let me also go back to something you said earlier. In Canada, so is it a Canadian thing where if you are going through your mental illness issues that they give you, gift cards? Is that part of the system where you pay higher taxes?
So our tax system is marginalized. So right now I'm a low tax bracket. I'm under $45,000 for my taxes. And then I qualify for the disability tax credit on the federal government level. So that lowers my taxes by like $8,000 a year. But to get it, you need your doctor to fill out that form. You have to make, like, if they approve it right away, you're okay. But if they don't, you're making an appeal. You're going back and forth with the federal government to prove you're disabled to get the disability tax credit. Otherwise, my income stays under 45,000, where I typically don't pay taxes in my tax
Okay.
bracket. But how I have my online business, if my online business makes like 10,000 for the month, which is like 6 figures for the year, yeah, my tax bracket goes up each basket of income. So they'll do 45 to like 59,100 or something like that. And then if I'm over 59,100, then you will be at like that percentage of money that's higher is a different tax bracket. So like the first one could be 15%, but the next one is 5.2%, and the next one's like 7.9.
Okay.
That's why some people are paying like 40% in taxes, because each income bracket they're making, each basket is paying a different percentage of taxes. But if you're under 45,000 for taxes for most of Canada, based on like the government website, every year they list it, there's a way of not paying a lot of taxes because you just don't fall in a higher tax bracket. Well, like my parents, they make 6 figures. Every year they complain when they go over $80,000. So like I grew up knowing like, you don't want to make too much. And I'm like, but your job is going to pay you. Like, it's just,
okay. I got you.
yeah. So like, and then your corporations are structured differently for taxes. So like, yes, people complain about taxes, but it's because they don't read the government website. Like they're not reading IRS or they're not reading Canada Revenue Agency to figure out, what does the government say? The government, like I have a paper here for my registered disability savings plan, which is an account that I got after being approved for the disability tax credit, where the government said if I put in 4,800 deposit into that account, the government will match with grants and saving bonds of 10,500. It's
Oh,
on the government website. If I call
yeah,
the government and ask them, they'll say yes. Like it's not a scam. Like people need to read their own government's websites to know what the government says they're going to do.
absolutely.
Because it's available. You can call their phone number. Yes, you're on hold for 2 to 3 hours, but you're talking to the government that says we follow these rules because we made them up. That drives me nuts the most. We're in countries that have taxes, but nobody reads the rules of the taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. People complain without reading, right? So let me reverse. So the ability to qualify for disability, is that coming from the multiple sclerosis or the actual mental health,
It's
mental
both.
illness? So
It's
both. So either
both.
one can qualify you.
It's so multiple sclerosis added on for me. So multiple sclerosis was after by bipolar. So I was treating my bipolar first. I was qualified for social disability on bipolar, but my disability tax credit got denied on my bipolar disorder first in 2007. Then in 2020, I reapplied because I had a new diagnosis on top of my existing diagnosis. So the combination of both diagnoses is what got me approved. So if
Gotcha.
you're diagnosed with one illness now, as you get older, you may get worse. Or you may get better. Life is weird. Like you have an illness, but like how people may or may not have COVID problems after. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them may be applying to their disability programs. And if they don't you'll never get approved right away. The government doesn't want you to get approved for their programs right away. But it's up to you to know what they are. And then you may get a lawyer to help you fight it, or you just keep fighting until you get approved. And then when you're approved, you are agreeing to their rules and structure for their disability programs. Where like, and that's where, for me, so my provincial government says my asset limit is $40,000. I don't want to stop at $40,000. I want to exceed $40,000. And having that mindset of knowing that I do want to be a millionaire with my disability so that I can have access to my wealth building, that is making the commitment. Like if you just stop at, oh, I'm disabled, I can't work, I can't do anything, the government will give you whatever pennies left over in the budget. They're not going to give you a livable wage. So if you want to live comfortable, you want to live where you can manage your illness, take any treatments or alternative treatments you want, you need to make more money.
Absolutely.
There's no way to avoid it. I tried, I looked. There's no way of avoiding, oh, I'm disabled. Oh, my kids have a disability. Oh, we only make this much. You have to figure out how to make more money. The same way Dave Ramsey says the best place to go when you're broke is to work.
Yeah, yeah, he does say that. I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
It is the best place to go when you're broke. So looking at your mental illnesses, I know it can get better or worse over time. If you had to give it a ranking from 1 to 10, just across the board, where would you say you stand right now?
Right now, it's a 7 because the medications are working and there's not a lot of side effects.
Okay. So at your worst, let's suppose, I want to take this stigma off of mental illness. I want people to have a better understanding of it and understand how it can impact people's finances. So at your worst, if let's suppose it was somebody similar to you, same age, same income, and you both, you have your mental illnesses, they have zero mental illnesses. We all have mental health struggles sometimes, but let's suppose they have zero mental health illnesses. They have all the support structures in place that they need in order to be successful and navigate throughout life without issues. How would that show up in money as far as budgeting, as far as the ability to stay out of debt and to put money into retirement? Like what kind of difference could that make on, long-term and short-term with money?
So the first place is your grocery budget. So because disability alone for me, it's $1,454 a month, which is like $17,000 a year. The amount for groceries is $200 a month. Groceries, is going up. Everyone's complaining about inflation. Mm-hmm. And my mom is always saying, you need to exercise, you need vegetables. Those cost money I don't have in my budget. And then even though, yes, some things go on sale and my college is giving me gift cards to buy more groceries, I'm planning carefully when I buy vegetables, when I buy fruits, when I buy protein, when I buy stuff in a can. You're constantly trading one item of groceries for another. And then when you go to your doctors and they run their physical, or they check your blood and your urine all the time, they're always saying, oh, you're deficient in this, you're low in that, you need to eat this. You like my heart echocardiogram, it may be because of diet. I have no idea. We're still going to find that out with my doctors. So for a person that just works every day and they're a little bit stressed out or a little bit burnt out and they take a vacation and they're fine, they have a lot more room of adjusting their budget to be more healthy in their diet and exercise. So if you're disabled, diet and exercise goes first. It's sacrifice first. Because you're worried about everything. You're not just worried about diet and exercise. And then you're lectured by everybody with their fancy advice. So think positively or change your diet or do yoga. Those things cost money. A yoga mat costs money. Like you're always sacrificing your health just because you just don't have enough of money, because the government is set up in a way to make sure people who are disabled are not getting what they need.
Wow, those are some good points. It's always been interesting to me how you can go to any fast food restaurant. It'll be $8 for a salad and then $1 for a burger, $1 for fries. Or you can go buy 8 or 9 packs of Little Debbie's, which will last you a few days, compared to one salad at a restaurant. To me, it's just like, it's backward. If you want your people to be healthier, then I don't know, maybe you make the foods that are healthier cheaper, but it's the opposite. Those are always way more expensive. I have students who come in sometimes, the ones who have the most behavior issues, and they're coming in with these 25-cent colored drinks and these, 45-cent snacks that we know impact behavior, all the sugar and all the colors. But you can't lecture them because you understand why they are in the position in that situation for their parents to have to buy those things. So That's a great point. Groceries is the first place. What else?
Then it's your rent costs. So for me, I've been in this place for 14 years. My rent is $915 a month, but the average in the city is 2,500, and my disability is 1454. So as long as I pay my rent on time, every time, or I figure out how to make more money to pay my rent 1 month in advance, which I did, and then my disability screwed up, so which I talk about on my YouTube channel, of they thought I'm in government housing and they sent a check to government housing with my name on it and I don't live there, and government housing sent it back. Then they caught the mistake, and because my rent was paid in advance for not being in government housing but a normal city rent, my landlord didn't say, oh, I'm behind on my rent because it was paid in a month in advance. So like things like that are affected. If you're in a housing program, you have to have extra money to pay your rent. Like the homeless population of people in North America is getting bigger and the governments are not doing anything about it. And we know this: California, Toronto, Vancouver, we see it. We know there's more homeless people. We know in the winter more homeless people are dying because there's not enough money in the low income support programs to make sure everyone's rent is paid, period. And then pushing go buy a house when some people are homeless and can't even think of renting an apartment.
Absolutely. And it is from what I read, I can't remember the article I read, but it is a high correlation between those who have mental illness and the homeless, correct?
Yeah. And then being homeless and trying to figure out your basic needs causes mental illness problems like psychosis, sleep deprivation, lack of hunger. Like the amount of homeless people that are asking for money, it's usually is for food. But if you're intoxicated, you don't worry about, oh, I need to eat. That's the trade-off. Be intoxicated so I don't worry about my problems, or make sure I have something to eat and then worry about when I'm going to eat again.
So we often go out and judge people. We say, oh, I'm not giving them $5 because they're going to go spend it on alcohol or whatever. We don't know that, but we make that assumption.
We do. We make this weird assumption when they may need the alcohol so they don't have to worry about their problems.
So the alcohol to them may be more beneficial at the time than a burger.
Yeah. And then what's funny, so when you're in, so I was in psychosis, but they found me in my hallway. I needed an ambulance. They sent the police over. So if I didn't have the mental brain to say I need an ambulance, they would have brought me to the police station. They did. They brought me to the hospital. I got to see a social worker. I got to see the doctor. I got to see the nurse. The social worker is what evaluated me, but it could have been worse. And I'm at home when it happened. So we also have that when people are having mental illness problems, we're not sending the right support systems to help them first.
And that's the conversation that we're having in the USA, is when you see people who are shot at times, they're having a mental health breakdown, then they send a police officer who a lot of time aren't trained for that. And, they don't know, like, this person is holding a knife. What do I do? They end up taking the life of that individual. But then you have people on social media who are making jokes like, oh, maybe they should have sent a mental health counselor or something like that. And those
They
are just
don't, because so the mental health counselors are at the hospital. You have to stay alive, get to the hospital, and then have them say, oh, go back to your family doctor, even though they know what's wrong with you. So that's what they did. They interview me. They asked if I'm on medications. I told them what medications I'm on. And then they're like, oh, go back to your family doctor. So in the hospital, there's no, they're going to give me enough things to calm me down. And because my mental illness, I remember going into the hospital and they're like, my mental illness is my mental illness, this is my diagnosis. But if I stay in the hospital with their patients, I would get worse. So they're also not making sure people are assessed properly, where they're not mimicking someone else's mental illness. Because if you're around people that are sicker than you and you're still mentally ill for your level, and you're around other people that are stronger in their mental illness, or it's expresses differently, you end up mimicking them and they treat everybody the same. Or they diagnose you wrong because you're showing symptoms of something else instead of what you actually have.
Wow. That is very interesting. And the thing is, when they're not able to provide the support that you need if they give you the wrong diagnosis, if they don't understand what you really need. So that is interesting. And I just imagine a situation where that shows up in your financial life, you know?
Yeah. So if you're diagnosed with the wrong mental illness and you treat that one with medication, they give you a prescription, you go to your insurance, they fill out the prescription, you take it until the doctor prescribed it to you, and then you go through side effects. Then the doctor's like, well, keep working, keep taking the medication when you know there's something wrong. And then, like for me, I went off cold turkey on a medication because it wasn't working. And then we found out after bipolar disorder is different than depression. Depression has a different medication treatment than bipolar disorder. So they had me on depression medications instead of medications related to bipolar disorder. And I was spending money on medications that was the wrong medication. So there's that of not actually getting the right diagnosis and treating what you think it is and giving them medications to patch them up until they see the next doctor or the next treatment plan or there's opening in a program. Because that's the other thing too. There's waiting lists for everything. Like
Waiting list
if
for
you
everything.
want to see your psychiatrist or a specialist, you're usually on a 6 month to 1 year waiting list at worst because of the pandemic.
Wow. So that obviously is going to impact your mental health and your finances as well, just being on a waiting list so long.
It does. Like that's how I got approved for disability here while I was being evicted from my apartment. And then when I got approved, I'm calling everybody and showing up at offices to make sure that my checks got issued so I could pay my rent to keep my apartment. And that window of, yes, I'm doing all the things I need to do to access all the services I need. And while I'm waiting, I'm still in crisis. And then my mom's like, well, you're going to live in a homeless shelter. I'm like, no, we just need to pay the rent to keep me here.
Yeah.
And only because at the time my rent covered exactly what my disability income was is why I stayed here.
Hmm.
But now anybody who's on social assistance, because they're not increasing that with inflation, if they're behind on their rent and they need to catch up on paying the payments, they need to hope that their landlord is willing to mediate the payment plan based on their actual income.
Wow. So at the end of the day, when we're looking at mental illnesses and the taboo that's associated with mental illnesses, do we think that it's ever going to be a situation where we're able to get rid of the taboo, or is it just something that's going to always be around? Because, you know, people are like, oh, that person's crazy or this or that, just always having such a negative, you know, perception of these individuals when they're people too, you know, and
Yeah,
we look at them a certain way.
that is the battle we're having now. So like I know in my province, they're protesting to increase it, but our politician is saying that disabled people should go to work. Not every disabled person is able to work. Like, and then for disabled people that got on their provincial or state program, you already went through a medical review to get approved, but it doesn't translate to the federal countrywide disability program. So if you're approved on your state provincial program, you're not automatically approved to a federal program. It's a separate application. It's a separate doctor filling out forms. Sometimes doctors charge to fill out the forms. And then there's no guarantee you get approved, even though you know you're already approved and disabled for your state or provincial program. And because politicians don't have, if they don't have a family member that's already disabled, they're not going to acknowledge anybody else who's disabled because they think everyone's the same. They think all their citizens are the same, and we're not.
That is insane. So if there's someone watching this, or, you know, they have mental health issues, they have various mental illnesses, and they want to get out of a rut and they want to begin to build their financial future, what advice would you give them?
Avoid debt, and you will have to work. Like there's no way avoiding not working unless you marry somebody with money. But if you marry somebody with money, you risk opening financial economic abuse in the relationship. So you will still have to make your own money and avoid debt. So yes, I followed the Dave Ramsey plan because it got me out of debt. Like I used the Canada system for the bankruptcy and I sped up being debt free faster, but I don't have that burden. There's no collection people calling me. the internet's paid for, my rent is paid 1 month in advance. Like I can pay for high speed internet now, like because I don't have any debt. Like even though yes, now I have the credit card at Capital One, but I don't spend my credit card unless there's $1,000 in savings first. And that $1,000 in savings transfers to that credit card the minute I spend on the credit card. So I don't have a gap of, oh, I have a credit card balance and no way of paying it. I have to have $1,000 savings and $1,000 limit. So whatever my limit is what my savings account is. And it's a separate sinking fund that Dave Ramsey talks about to pay for the credit card. So I have my credit card sinking fund, and every dollar in that sinking fund pays the credit card after I use the credit card or before I use it. Because you can also prepay your credit card ahead of time. So when the charges post, the card company already thinks you paid the bill.
So it technically performs as a debit card.
It does, but as long as you're not carrying a balance and then go get another credit card or get a line of credit or a payday loan. Payday loans are awful.
Oh, that's a cuss word. That's a cuss word.
They're not illegal in Canada. They operate very legal here, and they still charge like 200% interest. Like I know in the States, they've outlawed them completely, but not in Canada. You can still, like, they're right beside a Starbucks. So you see a payday loan and then Starbucks right beside it.
Where did you see them outlawing payday lenders?
Some states, some of the states
okay.
But not Canada hasn't. So this is where we're the same, but we're not. It's just the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, a lot of payday lenders set themselves up outside of these military bases with these, 19, 20-year-old soldiers, and they just start their,
and
adult lives in debt.
Here, they're in any city they can have a spot.
That's a shame. That is an absolute shame.
Because my city has 6 or 7 of them, all the same franchise on one street.
And is it more concentrated in lower income areas, like in the United States?
It's the big city. So it's the big city in Toronto downtown. And there's if you go like Money Mart website and you look at the certain cities, you'll see they're side by side. Like there's and then there's another version of it across the street, like Easy Financial or Rent to Own or Cash for Gold. Like they just have different like pawn shops also, same thing. Pawn shops are more than just pawn shops now. They can lend you money, like without you having collateral.
Absolutely. I can go on all day. This has been a great, great dialogue. I think that being able to have conversations around mental health and mental illnesses and finances, it's important because those are things that we just don't talk about. First of all, in the Black community, we avoid, our mental health. We don't want to talk about it. Or we think it
can be cured in church, and church does not cure everything.
That's a conversation for another day.
And then most of the churches have nurses and doctors sitting right there. Yeah. It's a sore spot right there.
We might have to have that conversation, off record or whatever. But I've seen that as well. And, people suffer in silence because they don't feel like they can get the help that they need. And we don't want to talk about it, or we are shunned when we do talk about those things. And I just think it's a conversation that we need to have in our community. And just when you mix that in with finances as well, oh man, that's just something that we need to do a better job at communicating. So I really appreciate you for your platform. And I'm going to be sure to share this with all of my followers and my subscribers. And I hope you do the same, because your message definitely needs to get out. And I would love to come on your platform one day and just have a conversation as well. Before we end this, I do want to hear about your various investments, because a lot of times people don't know how to invest. They don't know what to invest in. So tell me about that real quick.
For me, I heard of Vanguard, then I looked at Vanguard Canada, and they're different. So Vanguard US and Vanguard Canada are different because of the foreign exchange. And then there's foreign exchange fees and then foreign exchange taxes. So I use a robot advisor because I didn't want to invest by myself, like buy my investments individually. I didn't want to do that, even though we're ETFs. So I went with an investment firm that had robo investment portfolios that are ETFs, because I wanted low fees, but I wanted the portfolio to do the buying and selling on its own well be worrying about it. So I went with Wealth Simple and CI Direct Investing, and then ING Direct now is called Tangerine in Canada. I went with them where I answered the interview questions. I told them my risk tolerance and they picked a portfolio for me, and I just put money in there and it does what it does with the market. Like I look at it every day because it's nice to see money that's there that's for my future, and money that is assigned for investment. It's not in savings or I can access it instantly. It's straight in those accounts, especially with the disability savings plan. That has to be in there for 10 years minimum because the government said so. Or if I took it out, I have to pay a penalty and pay back all the grants and bonds they put in that account. And that one's my biggest account with $30,000 in there. But it just sits there. It's Vanguard, it's iShare, it's BMO. It just does its thing. I don't worry about it. I don't care that the market is doing what it's doing because I'm 37. I still got 40 years or more to invest. And in Canada, we have a tax-free savings account. When you open that, you can keep that open until the day you die. So you put in $6,000 typically a year. Some years, depending on which politician is in power, they make it 10,000. But that's tax-free growth. That's like if it's set up as a tax-free investment account. Some people open it as a tax-free savings account because they think it's a savings account, but it's not. It's just the way that the government named it tax-free savings account, but it's a bucket that you decide what the bucket is doing. And for me, it's Vanguard, it's iShare, it's BMO. It copies exactly all my portfolios.
Okay.
Because of the risk tolerance I have, it's the same for all of my accounts. But I just check the statement when they email it to me once a month. I only look at it to see it's my money. That's it. And I have a nice party that it's my money because it's in my name and there's no spouse taking my money. Like it's a whole thing, but it's always, I make the deposits and I don't think about it. Because
Gotcha.
I need to make sure that the sinking funds and the savings accounts, those are money I pull out whenever I need it.
And everything else, you just dollar cost average. If the market's down, you get more shares. So you really don't worry about it.
No, I don't. And then my bills, you can pay bills ahead of time. Like my electric bill, it's a low income program on the electric bill, and then it's automatically paid $86 a month. But sometimes there's a credit on my electric bill for like $900. I would call them and ask for a refund back, but they still have their bill paid and they're current. So sometimes if I get back money for overpaying bills too much, that money goes invested.
Gotcha.
It's the same thing with the tax refund. If you get your tax refund, either your retirement account, tax-free savings account, if you qualify for the registered disability savings plan, invest it. Yes, the government held on to your money with not giving you interest back, but then put it into the same account the government said you can invest in for tax-free. So people thinking to spend their tax refund are not doing anything good for themselves unless they invest that money again.
Absolutely. Those are some good nuggets. That's some good information. And I think that if somebody listens to this interview, hopefully in its entirety, that they could, walk away with some good information, tangible information that they could use in order to build their financial future. So Minnie, I really appreciate you for joining us today. How can people find you?
There is my YouTube channel, YouTube, Minnie C. Riley. And then everything is Minnie C. Riley, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. There is a TikTok. I'm not there yet, but it's there. Like I registered it, but I'll get to TikTok eventually, but everything is Minnie C. Riley.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll put that in the description in the chat as well. And hopefully, you'll get more followers. And I look forward to speaking with you in the near future. And I'm excited about this conversation. I think that it's important. It's imperative that we are able to understand each other when it comes to, mental illness. I don't think any one person is better than somebody else. I think that we are all different individuals, and our unique differences is what makes us all great. So I appreciate you for joining today and telling your story. And, we'll be in touch real soon. Okay, Minnie?
All right.
All right. Hey, you have a phenomenal day.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.